Fred decides to settle in the middle of the Atlantic, in the Azores, where his passion for diving began.
When I went to the Azores, I took the books I had read during my childhood, my illustrations. This was very important to me.
His thirst for knowledge could only be satisfied by books, especially bestiaries, his own and those of a library.
Then I did some more research. Books were a revelation to me. They were like companions. It's been a long journey, and they're still part of my world. When I plunged back into the old books and atlases, the prince took on a whole new meaning. After several years of freediving, I was able to understand the origin of the legendary sea monsters. Many were born from the navigator's observations, but they only observed the ocean from above the surface. Beneath the foam, the sea was a world of terror and fascination. Of course, it's hard to believe Jonas was swallowed and spit out by a so-called whale. I do not believe in coincidence. The invention of monsters always served a purpose. From several silhouettes glimpsed beneath the surface, sailors created myths. To boost the image of their trade, they invented sea serpents and mermaids. Fanciful descriptions of animals decaying or drifting ended up being transformed into extraordinary creatures. Strangely enough, from one map to the next, the same monsters appeared. They were inspired by real animals. They were much larger than humans and haunted the limits of the known world. Those strange descriptions gave way to much more detailed ones when naturalists were able to observe the giants of the sea at the edge of our world. Just like the dead or dying whales that I saw during my childhood in Belgium. Even today, scientists are still unable to put them back out to sea. But through the systematic study of creatures that are fished or stranded, they have progressively described, classified, and compared the anatomy of animals that inspired those legendary creatures. The humpback whale, for instance. Thanks to scientists, we now know it's a marine mammal, a baleen whale. In this way, the first naturalists progressively killed off the myths. But they knew almost nothing of the biology of these sea giants, because they rarely ventured out to sea. In the footsteps of these pioneers, we have been trying to learn more, to observe the living animals, and to take conservation measures if needed. It was about time. In less than a century, fishing has developed and become industrialized, and those we once called monsters are now being slaughtered before we even get a chance to discover more about them. The problem with sharks is that they are victims of overfishing, and that 75 million are killed each year, and this is all happening before we can study them and understand their behavior. I think we do things backwards. Some species may very well become extinct before we are even able to understand how they lived. This is not acceptable. What's certain is that the problem is human greed. For me, the only thing that will stop overfishing is when it will no longer be commercially viable. I think it's not realistic to believe in regulations or the enforcement of laws.
Is it possible for a lone freediver to take on these international fishing corporations and defend a silent population hidden beneath the ocean's surface?
I never know what tomorrow will bring. It's both scary and exciting.
By chance, Fred discovers a report by the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It points out that 40% of shark species are considered data deficient. This means that we don't have enough information about their biology to be able to assess the protection measures that need to be taken. Fred's future project takes shape. Why not use his skills as a freediver to bring back photo evidence and information about these sharks? He heads to South Africa, where many sharks are accessible to freedivers in shallow waters. Off these wild coasts stirred by cold currents and turbid waters, Fred joins a freediver named Steve Benjamin. He has discovered some little-known sharks described as data deficient by the IUCN. He calls them cow sharks.
So Fred, we're going to head down into this kelp forest over here, and we're going to swim across the channel to that kelp forest in the distance. You can see it there. Now, we can find the cow sharks there. There may be a few, there may be quite a lot. It really depends on the day. And they get quite big, sort of 0.5 meter to 2.5 meters in length. So there might be some big sharks down there.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll swim to the kelp forest and go see what we can find. There can be quite a few, eh? In summer when the water gets really warm, you can get up to 30 or 40 at the same time.
At the same time?
In the same area. You only ever really see maybe 10 at a time.
With these first scientific expeditions, I realized that freediving brings about constant questioning. You always need to adjust. There are unexpected events to which you need to adapt.
The shallow waters lying in front of the kelp forest have a surprise in store. Cat sharks. This name designates sharks that are endemic to the South African coastal waters. They often fall victim to fishermen. The IUCN also considers this species at risk, but does not have enough data to determine the protective measures that need to be taken. Can Fred start a survey program with this elusive shark species? Unfortunately, these fish are too small and difficult to find to conduct a proper survey. His studies must focus on accessible marine animals of a considerably larger size. Animals that can potentially be dangerous to man, like cow sharks. He must go deeper to find them.
When I dive, I think there's always that search for inner peace. Especially with free diving, you have to be aware. I open my eyes and see if there are any animals. This phase is generally very comfortable. After a while, perhaps 10 seconds, you start to feel the need to breathe. If animals are around, or if something is going on, you either have a choice to continue your free dive, to extend it as much as possible, or if nothing is happening, you can go back to the surface and start preparing for a new dive.
If the free diver is dependent on the air trapped in his lungs to explore the sea depths, what advantage does he have compared to a diver with oxygen?
A free diver is extremely discreet, so it's much easier to get close to an animal, and also for the animal to approach us. The animal will come to us, and that obviously is the holy grail for a photographer or a cameraman. With sharks, you generally have to try to establish a relationship. Obviously, it can't be based on power, because we'd lose. But it's a little like playing cat and mouse. If you act like a prey, the shark will tend to get closer to you. But if you take up space in the water, he'll tend to backtrack.